Thank you for joining us for the mayoral debate here. Chamber of Commerce offices, Bob Brunel, the challenger, Chris Larson, along with us, the incumbent mayor, Lori Palmberry as well. We'll spend the next 45 minutes to 55 minutes talking a little about some city issues, answering some questions. I will say that the questions are provided by the Chamber of Commerce. They're not something I came up with. It's Chamber of Commerce members who have been solicited for these questions. And we'll get to the questions in just a little while. We want to make sure we find out more about both candidates. And we'll start with the incumbent mayor, Lori Palmberry. Lori, you had 3 minutes to introduce yourself again to the voters, talk a little about some of the things you've been able to do here as mayor.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Bob. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting this event. My name is Lori Palmberry, and I am serving as mayor of the city of Oshkosh currently. I have been on the council for going on 5 years now, and I've served on over a dozen boards and commissions at the city level and numerous private nonprofit boards over the years. I got my bachelor's degree here at UW Oshkosh in Urban and Regional Studies, did a lengthy internship with the East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, working on things like safe routes to schools, our Fox, Wisconsin Heritage Parkway, and transportation in the 12 county region. I also went on to get my master's degree with UW Milwaukee in urban planning with an emphasis in GIS. I have 2 grown children and 2 teen grandchildren. My husband works here at the university. I have lived in Oshkosh for over a decade now and enjoy the Fox cities. We live downtown in Census Tract 5, Block Group 6, a very densely populated central city neighborhood, and we enjoy being downtown very much. And so that's really all I have right now. If you'd like to go on to the next question.
Thank you, Lori. We appreciate that. Chris Larson is the challenger, determined the second top vote getter in the primary that was held just a few weeks ago. Chris, you had 3 minutes as well. Use as much time as you like to talk a little about Chris Larson.
Sure. Thanks, Bob, and thanks also to the Chamber for having us as a great resource for the community. We appreciate the chance to talk and be asked questions. I'm also an Oshkosh native. I was born here, went to college in Eau Claire, spent some time in Madison, and then came back to Oshkosh 14 years ago to kind of do what I do for a living. And I think it's important to do some of that in your hometown if you can. So I'm a small business owner, active in my community. Currently, I'm the vice chair of your downtown Oshkosh Business Improvement District. Recent past president of your Oshkosh Convention and Visitors Bureau Board of Directors. I've been on lots of boards, lots of commissions for the city. I'm active in the Wisconsin Restaurant Association, industry specific wise. And I too live right downtown. Lori and I think live in the same neighborhood. And I have no kids, just a couple of dogs who are a big hassle. And that's a short intro. We're going to be fast today, Bob.
All right. Again, the format, the questions have been put together by members of the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. We're going to allow 2 minutes for each answer. We'll start with Lori Palmberry and go back to Chris, and then we'll come back to Chris, and then we'll go to Lori. It's a little confusing, but you'll catch on as we go along. The first question from our membership is, as mayor, what is the one initiative that you will advance to improve the business climate of Oshkosh? Lori, you're up first.
Yes, so advancing the business climate in Oshkosh certainly is an important question, and I appreciate that question. I believe that if we are to build our resiliency in the business community, we need to focus on enabling and supporting our small businesses, especially those micro businesses and those micropreneurial opportunities as we look at recovery and what that means over the next few years. So certainly I support the smallest micro level at an exponential level. And I believe that our business community here is varied and diverse. We offer, a lot of service sector type as well as manufacturing, but certainly we need to expand our diverse offerings if we're to be resilient in this recovery opportunity.
Chris, let me pose the question to you as we go along. As mayor, what is the one initiative that you will advance to improve the business climate of the city of Oshkosh?
Thanks, Bob. And I don't know that it's just one necessarily, so it's a little bit of a hard question to answer in that manner, but it's an in general kind of thing with me. And post-pandemic is, I think, the right way to look at this, because it's going to take, as Lori mentioned, lots of support of all different size things. I presume as we go forward with these questions, there will be lots along the same lines, and you're going to hear me talk about the same thing a handful of times, I would imagine. But it's a matter of finding the right levels of balance of funding and infrastructure in general, and the support would come from that. So it's a little bit of a broader answer from me, and it does come back to the ability of council to act, or of council to act quickly when things come before them as well. But it's just going to be a different landscape for the next couple of years, I have a feeling, as we look at recovering from what just happened, because it wasn't a great year. And it's going to take some creative things going forward for sure.
Chris, you'll get the next question first as we continue on. What distinguishes you from your opponent? Again, you'll have 2 minutes to answer this.
That's everybody's favorite question right now. And everybody keeps asking the same thing, because yes, we do tend to agree on a handful of things for sure. And I've been supportive of Lori as mayor. I think she does a very good job as mayor. I think the biggest differentiator is that my focus is pretty singular. And that could be a detriment to me. I understand that. But my focus from the get-go, and the reason I'm running, is to restore efficiency to the actual method of municipal government that we have in Oshkosh, which is a council manager form of government. I think at times we get mired down in discussing things that we don't need to discuss as much. I think there's a different level of accountability that needs to come back to council between the general public and council's accountability, and our city manager's accountability to council as well. So I know it's not the most exciting answer to that question, but that's the biggest differentiator for me. I'm excited to hear what Lori thinks as well, because we haven't had much chance to talk about it necessarily. But that's where my focus is, and that's a little different, I think, for many who's run for this office before at all, because it's just kind of a return to efficiency, and that's where it's at.
All right, let me pose the question to the incumbent mayor, Lori Palmberry. What distinguishes you from your opponent?
Yes, Chris and I have had some great conversations around how everyone is so intrigued to ask that question. And, certainly as Chris said, we do agree on a handful of things. And, certainly this is a position that is equal to other council members with some additional duties layered on there. So representation and, in an at-large form of government for council members here with our full-time city manager, everybody's got a different perspective on how to make that more efficient. I certainly had those same views coming in as a novice council member, and we learn things along the way procedurally that can be at times frustrating and slow moving. So I think I actually would agree with Chris that there are times that we could do things better. There's always room for improvement. As far as differentiating ourselves, I think probably, if you look at our city strategic plan and those 5 elements, effective government, strong neighborhoods, economic development, public safety, quality of life, it's just maybe a difference in interpretation on the values and what we value most on behalf of the citizens we represent.
All right, one of the questions we have from the membership is, over the past year, the state of Wisconsin has imposed a number of restrictions on businesses and individuals aimed at reducing the spread of COVID-19. As a city council member, would you be in support of imposing further restrictions on the citizenry of Oshkosh? And if so, outline some of the restrictions that might be taking place. Discuss your answer. We'll pose that first to the incumbent mayor, Lori Palmberry.
Oh, I was already unmuted. Okay, well, sorry about that. If you had a bunch of background noise, I think it's just the cat in the background scratching at the window. Ideally, the state of Wisconsin Department of Health Services would be respected for their expertise, okay? But in the absence of the state and county abilities, yes, we should address local needs in an extraordinary crisis such as what we've had. We do have a number of ordinances that address health, safety, and welfare, which have been advised for the benefit of the public. I would support further expectations if reasonably and based on science proposed. It does not need to be reviewed as restrictive, but additional cautionary measures which have proven to reduce disease based on CDC guidelines, based on numerous studies. This is an important thing that we look at additional measures rather than a reductive perspective. Some opponents of public health measures are loud. The majority of the feedback, though, that I get from residents is that they want us to take whatever actions are necessary to enable us to reopen completely and as soon as possible in a safe manner. Is it perfect? Perhaps not. Those folks also believe that when we take shortcuts on public health, it ultimately makes it more difficult to get the virus under control. And I agree with them.
I'm going to pose a question to the challenger now, Chris Larson. Over the past year, the state of Wisconsin has imposed a number of restrictions on businesses and individuals aimed at reducing the spread of COVID-19. As a part of the council, would you be in support of imposing further restrictions on the citizenry of Oshkosh? And if so, please outline exactly the restrictions and what they may be.
Thanks, Bob. Not in favor of opposing additional necessarily, but my answer on this one has been pretty straightforward and simple, I think, from the beginning. My two businesses are directly affected by things like this, and they will continue to be so as well. For me, this is something we gave a lot of thought personally, and again, with regards to my business and my customers last March. This has been purely an economic decision for me from the get-go. And if everybody's heard me say this before, I'm sorry, but it's the answer. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified to make these decisions, but I can absolutely speak to the economic health of my business and to a degree how that reflects on the community around us. So I'm of the opinion that we can debate all day long where these ordinances should come from or mandates should come from. And sure, there's a lot of people who probably didn't make the wisest decisions at different levels across the board. But when those things fall to the city, I have absolutely no issue with them being put in place, because I think those measures are good for protecting my customers. And ultimately, I want as many other businesses on board with that same thing as possible, because what we all want is back to normal as soon as can possibly be. And I just don't buy into the having to wear a mask myself in my business does not violate my liberties in the manner that I think that I don't want to get through this more quickly. So I've been a proponent from the get-go of the economic side of this only. And I do think those things were the right things to implement at the right time, and that they will still help us get out of this as quickly as we possibly can, because that's what we all want.
Next question will go right back to you, Chris, and this is in regards to economic development. City of Oshkosh faces a number of challenging redevelopment sites, such as the former Pioneer property, the South Shore redevelopment area. Is there an appropriate level of support and incentive for the city to commit to advance the development of these particular sites in the future?
There is, and this is another one that's a favorite subject of mine, because TIF stuff is just really interesting to me. This is also one where I think that at current, that answer is probably different than it was 5 years ago and different than it might be 5 years from now. So broad stroke to answer your question, I'm generally in favor of TIFs, but would prefer that in a perfect world, the private development community take care of those things first. Barring that, which I know that incentives are necessary these days, I'm a but-for proposition in TIFs type of guy, and that I think that is the most important qualification as to whether or not we do provide support or not. So basically, to make this as quick as possible, the city should, and we do because state law mandates this, that you evaluate based on whether or not the project can happen without city assistance or not, and what degree thereof it would be successful or not. I'm also, in general, the fact that we've shifted primarily and entirely at this point to pay-go TIFs, I think is good, because it relieves the city from some liability there and some scary financial things that could happen. But back to the beginning of that statement I just made, I think some of that is going to be evaluated differently with regards to how we recover from the last year as well. So as a specific example, I know we're talking about a property that used to be a big white building on South Main currently, and there was some debate as to whether or not the TIF was appropriate in that case. And my answer to that a few years ago might have been not so much, because the but-for proposition I don't think is met entirely there. But at current, if we put beautiful apartments there and we bring 3 new families into Oshkosh, that would outweigh that to me to a degree. And some of those things can be flexible based on where we are economically in general right this second. So that was a really long answer to your question. I'm not sure I got there, so I'm sorry if I didn't.
Time anyway.
There were answers in there somewhere, I promise.
All right. Lori, I'll ask the same question to you. The city of Oshkosh faces a number of challenging redevelopment sites, such as the former Pioneer Inn property, South Shore redevelopment area. What is the appropriate level of support and incentive for the city to commit to advance the development of those particular sites?
Well, this is always a good question that comes up every election cycle and every budget, right? As a geographer, I look at relationships, both spatial and ecological. So our where and our living environment perspectives to frame our understanding of people and places. I think we need perspectives from the community that share land use in order to represent fairly and equitably. If we're going to solve and allocate resources through policy that supports the community, I think we need to prioritize the infill development across the city. I don't limit that view of economic development to a specific geographic location, although it is true that we have some challenging sites, as many communities do, especially the industrial sites. Again, I go back to encouraging some of the smaller entrepreneurial opportunities and to build that economic or entrepreneurial ecosphere to support creation of small and scalable businesses. With that said, I do think we should continue to support and prioritize with a discerning eye towards equitable access and impacts, including the Sawdust District or the South Shore redevelopment area, as you pointed out, downtown North Main Street and the North Jackson corridor. We've kind of shifted focus over to, west of the university, west of the river on Oshkosh Ave, which was an opportunity that came about, but it wasn't necessarily in our sights initially. And so I think we need to get back to some of those things. Pioneer, it's definitely that white elephant, as has been claimed. As far as the level of incentive, I think that we definitely need to re-examine our TIF policies. We've overused them.
TIF done. Let's move on to taxing and the fiscal shape of the city. I got a couple of questions here. The incumbent mayor, Lori Palmberry, is up first on this one. So the question is, the governor's proposed 21-23 budget would repeal Act 10, the signature initiative of former Governor Scott Walker, has saved taxpayers more than $13 billion, according to studies. Repeal of Act 10 would restore collective bargaining for public sector workers. Do you support the repeal of Act 10? And please discuss your position in that. Mayor, you're up first.
Yes, I do support the repeal of Act 10. We've seen some of the unintended consequences of maybe what was intended to be something other than what came out of that, some negative impacts, and I do support it. I think that collective bargaining, we've got to look at things like, contracting with local businesses. We've got to look at things like the ability to earn living wages. And I do support the repeal of Act 10, absolutely.
Let me ask you the question. Challenger Chris Larson, the governor's proposed 21-23 budget would repeal Act 10, the signature initiative of former Governor Scott Walker that has saved taxpayers more than $13 billion. Repeal of Act 10 would restore collective bargaining for public sector workers. Do you support the repeal of Act 10, and tell us why?
1,000% yes, and lots of the same reasons as Lori. Without getting overly political with it, different landscape when it was proposed and enacted in the first place. At current, simple example would be just look at the bargaining rights of teachers and the ability to get healthcare and not get healthcare based on where we're at with the pandemic. I honestly believe that if that were the case and we had better bargaining rights right this second, that there would be cost savings that we're not recognizing based on the handcuffs that were put on a while ago. So 1,000% yes, I support the repeal of it.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question, and this will go right back to Chris. Municipalities across Wisconsin are being challenged with share revenue levels from the state. This, coupled with property tax limitations, will challenge the city of Oshkosh and others as it develops an annual operating budget. Given this reality, outline your suggestions to maintain city services without additional taxes on folks here in the area.
Sure, and that's another one of my favorite little pet projects here and pet subjects. There's lots of things I think we can do with regards to finding better creative solutions. The chamber candidate questions that came out did a great job of highlighting some of these in lots of different ways, and looking at the ways we can approach things differently to get a broader overall benefit to us that doesn't necessarily include raising taxes. So some of those, I think they'll probably come up again in a second as well, but looking at different ways to handle street assessments is one. The best question in that whole survey, I thought, was with regards to raising the tax levy for new developments and the ability to do so. I think that's really important. The whole discussion, though, Bob, is really, really compelling to me, and one that I think will be important for us for years and for many municipalities as well, because we're all at that point right this second. I mean, levies make it so cities can't do much to necessarily improve without raising taxes, and that's an interesting way to look at it. But there's a cart before the horse analogy here that comes into play at some point, because we all want better roads, we all want better infrastructure, and we want businesses to come here. So we need to find ways to make that top end and bottom end lines of budgets work so that we can get the things we want and make the quality of life improve. It's an interesting subject.
All right, Mayor, I will pose a question to you as well. Municipalities across the state are being challenged with share revenue levels from the state. This, coupled along with property tax limitations, challenging the city as it develops its annual operating budget. Given the reality, outline your suggestions to maintain city services without burdening the taxpayer more and more.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for the question, Bob. So currently, there is an opportunity for us to support the governor's budget proposal, which includes an item of local sales tax at the municipal level, which could be one option. We also have, as you know, we've been having discussions about things like transportation utility fees for the replacement of special assessments. There are, decreasing amounts of that municipal aid coming in, whether or not the federal or the state or other, even the county contributes towards easing some of this. We certainly have the opportunity to support items that enhance the budget in terms of being able to source and pay for the continued quality services that residents expect. So, there's been a question about whether or not we should add fees, whether or not we should do things like vehicle registration fees or, the increase in our stormwater utility fees and other things. So there has to be a way in which we continue to provide those services. Otherwise, we have to look at increasing the levy. Otherwise, we have to look at cutting services.
Okay, let me divert from the script for a minute here, because I want to get your reaction. You mentioned sales tax. We'll go to Lori first, and then we'll go back to Chris. The governor has talked about the possibility of a sales tax here in Wisconsin as another way to increase revenue for municipalities. Currently, the county has the ability, but does not tax a sales tax. Your feeling, 30 seconds apiece, sales tax. Yes, no, why? Lori, you're up first.
Yes to the local municipal sales tax and yes to the county sales tax. We do see, especially over our tourism season, among other times of the year when certainly that could be of a supplement, and I support both of those items. I've lived in states and in cities where there were income taxes at the municipal level. We don't have that here in Wisconsin, and with the other limitations, I think it's definitely worth further consideration. All
right, Chris, your feeling about a possible city sales tax.
Yes, to that one, of course, and for the same reasons. Oshkosh is a perfect candidate for it. Tourism here would drive that, and there's certainly a reasonable case to be made for the use of tourism in generating funds based on that use. it's not the question, but I'll second what Lori said on the county as well. That's been interesting to me for years. And we're one of, I think, 3 or 4 counties in the state that does not have a county tax currently. It's become, and I understand all the reasons for not having it, that we need to have it for a rainy day type of scenario, but it's at current a competitive disadvantage to every county that surrounds us. And I think the revenue short of raising the levy is invaluable to us right now. And I don't know what else we can do.
All right, the sales tax, and have any idea what that would generate here in Oshkosh? Either one of you, how many millions of dollars that would mean to the city as a result of having a city sales tax?
Lori might know a little better. I know that we crossed that bridge with the Transportation Utility Fund Committee thing, and we tried to get a number. As I understand it, the state does not have individual county 0.5% numbers unless you collect them, because right now the sales tax goes into a fund for everybody. We can estimate it, and the estimation was a big dollar amount, but it's a great question. You can follow up. I know Mark had looked into it at that time and couldn't get a decisive answer.
I think
it might be better now.
The estimate's between $4 and $5 million each year. We're going to move on. We talked a little about fees, but I want to get that in here as well. It appears the city of Oshkosh is planning to balance the operating budget through the use of fees, in addition to property taxes. The city of Oshkosh has either adopted or is considering establishing a fee, special events, youth baseball, and vehicle registration is something that have been tossed about here. Do you support the establishment of more fees to balance the operating budget? We will go to Chris this time. We'll start with you. The idea of fees, and you talked a little about the vehicle fee, the wheel tax, as many of us call it, but your feeling about fees.
The idea in general, I think, Bob, is, we have to look at all the creative solutions we can find right now. We're going to keep coming back to that same subject because we do not have options to keep having nice services without raising the levy. There's just no other way to do that other than looking at creative solutions. Now, some of those that you just mentioned are better than others, of course. And I don't know how impactful youth baseball fees are, but I think they're all important to look at. And if we're going to continue on the same path we are, and we all want better things, right? This is the number one thing you hear. You hear it as much as I do, and I'm not a candidate very often, that the roads are bad and the plowing is bad and the runoff numbers are too high. And we need to find more creative solutions, and that might be the only option we have at current. So yeah, important to look at different ways to balance that budget. That doesn't mean put a fee on everything necessarily, but we've got to find solutions somewhere, and that's certainly one.
All right, we're going to go back to the incumbent mayor then for the same question. It appears the city of Oshkosh is planning to balance their operating budget through the use of fees in addition to our property taxes. The city of Oshkosh has either adopted or considered a special events fee, a youth baseball fee at one time, vehicle registration. We know that is a wheel tax. Do you support the establishment of fees to balance the city's operating budget, and why do you feel that way?
So not as a sole solution, although again, supplementation with fees, certainly, there is a demand for services, and either we raise the levy or we cut services. So this is another option. And I think the question's being framed as if that's the only way in which to balance the budget. I think we also need to look at priority-based budgeting and continue to look at priority-based budget with regard to inventorying our programs and our services and what we offer. Certainly, if we want to have these additional quality of life pieces, then we have to look at how to pay for those and even for basic services. So, it's not all based on fees, but I do support additional fees when appropriate.
All right, we're going to move on to community improvement / quality of life issues. And these questions, again, come from our membership at the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. Every community is in a competition for more talent and a bigger, better workforce. What should the mayor, the common council, and the city of Oshkosh prioritize to help Oshkosh become a first choice destination for in-state and even out-of-state people looking to make a move? So, incumbent mayor Lori Palmberry, the question is yours first.
Yes, talent attraction and retention as it relates to whether it's in-state or out-of-state. The mayor and the council have the responsibility of, working with staff, working with our constituents on what it takes to be a welcoming, inclusive, diverse community with equitable access. I think that number one, we have got to make sure that our housing stock can support folks coming in from other areas. And right now, as you know, there are limits to affordable, median homes and rentals. We have built some new rentals, of course, but we have to prioritize, that housing being the infrastructure to support them to come here. Number one, to have a roof over their heads. And, we need to continue to work with the school district where appropriate, so that that's a welcoming and inclusive environment as well. And it's not all up to the mayor and the council on this. I really have to say that, our community, our residents, also contribute greatly to how one feels when they come in from either out of the area or out of state.
All right, Chris, I'm going to pose a question to you again. Every community is in a competition for more talent and a bigger, better workforce. What should the mayor, the common council, and the city of Oshkosh prioritize to help Oshkosh become a first choice destination, not only for those in the state of Wisconsin, but even out of state people looking to make a move?
Sure, and thanks, Bob. I mean, this is going to be a lot like the other questions to a degree. A lot of it comes down to the right choices we make in budgeting and infrastructure and having the right services for the right people. And obviously that's a big part of attracting talent these days, because those are things that people care a lot about: nice streets, the right appropriate levels of fees, beautiful parks, so on and so forth. This is one that I spent a lot of time outside of work, I guess, for the last decade or so with the Downtown Oshkosh Business Improvement District. That is essentially the mission of the Downtown Oshkosh bid. That's just the focus that happens to be on that region alone. But what we do there is things like we actually promote people going out and attracting businesses. Beautification is a big part of what we do. And I think those things are applicable on a broader level to the city in general. And a lot of that is what we're talking about with regards to funds and budgeting in general.
All right, we're going to talk a little about governance here. Several years ago, as a means to create efficiencies and advance intergovernmental cooperation, the city of Oshkosh moved its public health department into Winnebago County Public Health Department, thereby relinquishing the function and apparently not managing the city of Oshkosh on its own. Given the issues caused by COVID-19, do you believe the interests of the citizens of Oshkosh were well served by this arrangement? Should the city of Oshkosh continue in the arrangement they currently have, or should we make a change? Chris, you'll get the first opportunity to answer this particular question.
Sure. I don't think that the moving from city to county had any kind of good or bad influence on how we handle a pandemic. I think that would have been difficult no matter which overriding organization was in charge of the health department. I don't recall necessarily when it was city rather than when it was county, but I can tell you that in general, I do a lot of work with health departments in general with my work with the Wisconsin Restaurant Association. And I think the county in general does a great job handling those things, certainly as they apply directly to me with my business. And that's a big part of what they do. But to answer your question specifically, no, I don't think there was any detriment to that being a county organization rather than a city organization. And I think the state and DADCAP in general and the relationship thereof with the county is a good relationship, in that Winnebago County with the health department does a great job of handling their work for the city.
All right, I will pose a question to the mayor again. Several years ago, as a means to create efficiencies and advance intergovernmental cooperation, the city of Oshkosh merged its public health department into the Winnebago County Public Health Department, thereby relinquishing this function as an entity that is not managed by the city at all. Given the issues caused by COVID-19, do you believe the interests of the citizens were well served by the change? And should the city of Oshkosh continue with this arrangement or make a possible change?
Well, that is a very great question, and I'm glad you asked it. I don't know that there is really a right answer on this, to be honest. While it did create efficiencies, it also, removed a layer at the city level for things that may be city specific. And I'll be honest, I reached out to our state representative, Gordon Hint's office, to ask whether or not at one point we would be able to recreate that. But according to state statutes, there is a prohibition on basically bringing back a city health department. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't be creative and form some kind of department that floats between, police, fire, and social determinants of health. But certainly the efficiencies may have been achieved on the intergovernmental piece. But during the pandemic, I was asking that question as the city and county were trying to work on dealing with things like the statewide mask mandate potentially being overturned, other health aspects that, they were trying to drink from a water hose on this. So I don't have a real good answer for that, but I would just say that I don't know that we were served to the extent that we would have liked to have been, but I do commend the county for doing everything they possibly could with what they were provided and working with at the time.
All right, we got a couple extra minutes, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions. Circle back to economic development. The city of Oshkosh recently rolled out their Sawdust District Master Plan. Please provide your thoughts about this particular plan. Discuss your priorities in regards to the implementation of the plan and the development opportunities that come along with it. Mayor, you'll have the first opportunity to talk with us about the Sawdust District and the master plan that's in place.
Yes, so the master plan for the Sawdust District that was rolled out has a number of sub-districts within that greater district. It also very much mirrors an opportunity zone in Census Tract 15. However, it's unfortunate that some of the shoulder neighborhoods were somewhat excluded, but I give a lot of credit to our community development department for considering those shoulder neighborhoods around there. Now, the implementation of that, certainly the city has gone to acquire, again, some very problematic industrial sites and trying to have that shovel ready for other opportunities coming forward. Folks know that the arena had a little bit of a rocky road. Hopefully they will recover from that. And then as we look to some of the catalytic projects that need to occur for that Sawdust District to be successful, certainly, we have provided incentives and also hope that private development will marry up with that to leverage those taxpayer dollars for success of the district.
All right, I'll pose the question again to the challenger, Chris Larson, so we can get onto this. But the city of Oshkosh recently rolled out what they call a Sawdust District Master Plan. Please provide your thoughts about this plan, discuss your priorities relative to the implementation of the plan and the development opportunities in that particular area of the city.
Sure, Bob. I mean, in general, I think it's great. It's certainly, I think everybody understands by now that that's a very compelling piece of property, one that we are lucky as a city to have. That's just, it's a remarkable resource. And in general, I'm happy that the city is working to do everything they can to make something awesome happen there. Arena was a big head start. Yeah, there were some hiccups at the beginning. I'm glad to see that it appears to be going better. And yeah, it's a lot of echoing what Lori said. It's great. I think had there not been a big setback with the world in general, we'd see different attractions there and different things happening right this second. But I'm glad that we're still working on it. It's certainly, I think if you were to ask everybody what is the most important thing to make happen in theory, that's a big one. And that's probably the best one just because of what it is geographically, where it sits and how it can be something amazing for us. So I'm glad we're looking at it. I'm glad it's moving forward.
All right, got time for this as well. The city council has discussed about adopting a citywide wheel tax. Wheel tax is a charge tacked on to the $75 annual registration fee of your vehicle. These are vehicles 8,000 pounds and less, or a personal vehicle would be affected by this. As mayor, would you support the creation of a wheel tax and explain your position why? Chris, you get the first opportunity here.
We don't have time for this, Bob. Ask everybody else in the room. We do not have time for me on this subject, right? John, I can hear John in the background going, just don't. I mean, well, it's a hard question for me to answer too, because no, wheel tax is not the answer, but I only know that because we've been down that path about 1,000 times. It'd be fantastic if it were the option. We don't have the right makeup of cars and roads and dollars needed for infrastructure to make that happen, because our wheel tax, if we did one here, would be double the highest one in the state. And nobody would like that, I promise you, because it would suck. There are better options for that, as everybody I think knows, and you're going to read it again in a minute with the corresponding papers that go with this. The method I like is very much it's a fund based on property parcels, not size, not water runoff, that makes an equitable dollar amount for each parcel to pay over the life of the time that it's there. And that is enough money to make the infrastructure and the road repair work and sidewalk and laterals underneath, and has a whole bunch of other residual benefits. I promise we don't, I can see you looking like, when will this guy shut up? But I promise that we'll have to talk more about it. You can read more about it later. There are residual benefits that come with collecting dollars in that kind of manner with regards to this project that make that work in a whole bunch of different levels. I mean, I can't even answer the question. Just say time.
All right, time. And you have a plan. Apparently you'll roll it out as we go along here, but not right now. All right, Lori, I want to ask this question to you as well. The city of Oshkosh, the council has discussed the possibility of a citywide wheel tax. A wheel tax is a charge that's tacked onto the registration fee of vehicles. These would be mostly personal vehicles. As mayor, do you support the creation of a wheel tax? And explain your position on that. And if you need a little more time, I'll give you a little more time.
Thanks. Yeah, so that conversation has come up a number of times. It's been discussed at length. I don't think of the vehicle registration fee, AKA wheel tax, as a silver bullet to fix these things. I do believe that we could look at a smaller vehicle registration fee in combination with other mechanisms to address our street reconstruction, our, the sidewalks. Certainly there's an equity component to sidewalks being included in this. And I believe that, it could work in combination with something like a trip generated. Right now, there's a study being done on trip generation as a method of calculation for replacing special assessments. There have been several iterations of items that, could have addressed this, but I do think that we could perhaps combine that on a smaller scale to marry up with dealing with some of the impervious surface area and trip generation. But we'll have to wait and see what the consultants and staff advise on that. I mean, certainly it's our responsibility to do our homework. With limitations at the state level as to what we can do. Again, it takes creativity and openness to other ways of doing this.
I'm going to ask this question for a friend. It's not part of your package. It's just something that somebody has come and they've asked me why. And I feel for them. They had a special assessment and several $1,000s. They're paying it back to the city at a rate of 6% interest. I see advertisement all the time for 2% interest and 3% interest. Why is the city charging 6% on assessments for people who probably do not have the ability to get a loan of 2% or 3%? 6% seems outrageous in this time, and we'll let the mayor get her opinion on this first. But I promised him to ask this question to both candidates in regards to the special assessment currently he's paying back at a whopping 6%. Your reaction to that, and what can he do? He doesn't have the access or the ability to get lesser charge on funds.
So, Bob, that question has come up numerous times, and certainly I want to, make sure that folks know that we recently, our long range finance made the recommendation, and council did pass this to reduce that interest rate to, I believe it was 4%. And the reason why there is an interest rate at all, and I agree with you, that can be very burdensome. Is that the city has to borrow to go ahead and move forward with these projects. And so we're in a situation where, even with someone taking the city finance option as opposed to, other financing options, not everybody has the ability to maybe take out an equity loan or to borrow in some other way or pay cash. But there is a cost associated with paying it up front and waiting the 10 or so years for that to be paid back. So that being taken into consideration, again, we did get that interest rate reduced recently.
Well, I would hope that we can find a way to help him and others who are finding themselves paying at a 6% rate because they don't have the ability to refinance or have the equity in their home to afford what has happened in front of their house. Chris, I'll give you an opportunity. 6% seems like a very high interest rate for someone to pay. And I know the city needs to make some money on the money that they have borrowed to pay back the interest there. But could we come up with something more accommodating, a 2 or 3% interest rate for folks?
Yes, but there shouldn't be an interest rate at all. And the city shouldn't have to borrow to get the roads fixed. And barring raising the levy to repair the roads, we need to find a better solution to do so. It's a short answer, but I mean, that's the answer to your question. We should never have been in that position to be in the first place. There are many cities where that's not the case. And we do have ways to make that not the case here. So we should do that.
Final question. We'll go back to the script for this one, okay? Over the decades, residents in the city of Oshkosh have debated the effectiveness of their city council / manager form of government. Do you support our current form of government, or do you support moving to a mayor-alderman form of government, similar to what we have in Appleton as well as Green Bay? Chris, you'll get the first opportunity here. Support what we have currently or make a change?
Very much support the one we have currently, yes. I think that's the main reason I'm running is for refinements thereof. I think the way that this is set up and the direct democracy notion of it is the best way to get your ideas implemented. In general, there are cost savings in having a city manager rather than having paid mayors or aldermen. It's just the best example for a municipality our size. And I'll keep doubling down on the thing that comes up with this question. Not only do I think that the model is the right model for us, I think that having a mayor confuses that to some degree. And I would be a huge proponent of going back to the elected city council president, voted on city council president by council rather than elected mayor, because I think there are benefits in going that route as well that help with the efficiency in general.
So is it part of your plan to do away with the mayorship if you become mayor of Oshkosh?
Whether elected or not, yes. I think to your point and to the point of the question, you can get that added to the agenda if you would like to as well as a citizen here. So getting things moving in that direction is the right idea, in my opinion, yes.
All right, Lori, we'll ask you the same question. Over the decades, residents here in Oshkosh have debated the effectiveness of the city council / manager form of government. Do you support our current form of government, or do you support a mayor-alderman form of government, something similar to what we see in Green Bay and Appleton? Your answer.
It's not an either or. That's my answer. Certainly we benefit from having a professional city manager. There's also an assistant city manager. There are 9 department heads. There are 7 at-large council members representing, close to 70,000 people. I believe that the other option that we could explore, and I'm not extremely passionate about taking that as a priority to change. That's up to the people. If they want to, put forth a referendum, certainly they have the means to do that through the appropriate procedures. Council could bring it up, but it's not on my hot list. So I know this comes up every election cycle, if you support this or not. What I'm really interested in is, if we're going to look at changing the form of government, I'm not personally interested in being a full-time mayor. But I do think that we could benefit from some additional district representation. And Eau Claire is one of the cities that has a combination hybrid of aldermanic and aldermanic and at large. So they have, I can't remember what the number is, but could Oshkosh perhaps benefit from having some additional district representation in addition to our at-large? I believe it's worth exploring.
All right, we are going to wrap things up with closing comments from both candidates. We'll give them a second or two. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for having us in today, allowing us to question the candidates on the questions they prepared with their membership. In addition to that, we'll come back with another installment. We will have the county executive candidates coming in later in the month, so we'll have an opportunity for them to talk as well. Now, Lori went first with our first question, so it's only fair that I go back to Chris with his closing comments. You'll have 2 minutes, Chris, to wrap up the presentation today here on the Chamber Zoomcast.
Sure. Again, I appreciate it, Bob, and thanks to the Chamber for asking and for providing this resource. Lots of information about me if you're curious. VoteOshkosh.com is the campaign website. You'll find the corresponding social sites that go with that as well. The broad stroke stuff for me is, again, way back to the beginning. I'm a proponent of council manager form of government. I'm looking to increase efficiencies there. Part of VoteOshkosh.com as a platform in general is I think better inclusion is needed at the governance level in Oshkosh. So it's a get out the vote type of thing as well. And thirdly, I always like to mention that this is a no money campaign for me. We're not taking contributions. I'm not spending any dollars, and we'll only spend a couple of terms if elected in office because I want to see the turnover. I want to see more people engaged in this process. And I don't think this process should cost money. So it's sort of a principled thing in general for me. Lots of the questions I think are awesome. I'm glad to be asked them, and I certainly have opinions on things we're talking about. But my focus at this point is on the efficiency of that governmental form in general, so that when big things are brought by you personally, Bob, or good committees, which we have a bunch of, that council is better able to act on those things as they come up.
All right, we will wrap things up. 2 minutes to the incumbent mayor, Lori Palmberry, and then I'll come in and say goodbye to everybody here. But Lori, you have 2 minutes for your closing argument.
Yes, thanks, Bob. First of all, I just want to say I'm really thrilled and happy to see so many people running for office here locally. It's been quite a number of years since we've seen that kind of engagement, and that's important. So congratulations to those who have run, and we want to continue to see those folks involved. I want to continue our work as it relates to equity and the allocation of resources and land use here in our city. I am responsive, I'm reliable, I'm results focused, and I want to continue to be the people's voice in City Hall. So April 6th, vote for Lori Palmberry to re-elect. Thank you.
Thank you, and best of luck to both you. And again, the election, April the 6th. Again, we will be back later in the month. We'll sit down with other candidates and talk about a number of issues. Thanks again to Chris Larson, along with Lori Palmberry. And thank you for watching.